I realized there were more and more people who were being diagnosed or should be diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I noticed the behaviors, I noticed that they had impulse control problems. I also realized the behavior problems. And a lot of these people did not have the facial features that a full-blown fetal alcohol syndrome patient will have, but they had the behavior problems, and they also had the brain damage. Many people, or most people with fetal alcohol syndrome spectrum disorder, don't understand cause and effect. So they don't understand the consequences of their behavior. They don't learn from their mistakes in the past, and they keep committing crimes that other people may not do. They commit a crime and then they do it again because they're not able to rational and realize because of the brain damage that they have. They also don't understand why that when they get interviewed by the police that they often have a right to not speak to them. But just like people with intellectual disabilities, people with fetal alcohol syndrome spectrum disorder also want to please authoritative figures. They're very gullible, and they will often confess to crimes that they didn't commit because they want to please the police officer. They're told that police officers are our friends. So people with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder will often talk to police and make confessions, even to crimes they did not commit.
I've been interested in fetal alcohol science for more than a quarter of a century. As the brain papers were just starting to be published, it occurred to several of us that it ought to be possible to apply this in a radically useful way in the legal system, that the statistics were so strong, we ought to be able to use it to get hints at diagnosis of people who had come to the attention of the legal system for other reasons entirely. I'm moved to the extent that these mathematical observations can make a real difference for actual lives.
Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder impairs one's ability to effectively weigh and deliberate. It affects one's ability to effectively sequence one's thinking and one's behavior. It impairs one's ability to effectively recognize social context and to react in a way that's often socially appropriate. Those look like matters of will. And they are matters of will so often until we see a person whose brain has been impacted by events beyond their control.
Well, people with FASD, it's somewhat of a hidden disorder, particularly in alcohol-related neurological disorders, or partial FASD, where the person may look relatively normal to the average layperson. Hidden disorder, people engage in very foolish behavior. They show foolish judgment. A lot of people in the criminal justice system can be characterized that way. So there's kind of a tendency to just assume this is a bad guy, when in fact his behavior, which may have some antisocial components, doesn't make him an antisocial person, especially when he engaged in that behavior because of his inability to know when he was being used and manipulated. So I think the more the judges and lawyers and others know about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and are able to link it up with particular criminal types of behaviors, the more likely it is that justice will be the outcome.
You have to keep an open mind. You can't view a person with FASD the same as you might view somebody with a different intellectual disability, because we're talking about a disability which is caused by brain damage. And to me, it's most significant when we're dealing with the question of whether a person with FASD who's before the court is competent to stand trial, competent to waive rights to remain silent. Because the standard approach to determining competency that we've used for years and years and years with people who have mental retardation or people who are mentally ill just don't fit very well when we're trying to evaluate the competency of someone that suffers a permanent brain damage.
People with FASD get the short end of the stick in a way that's very tragic, particularly when we're talking about death penalty. And that's because these folks don't function very well. They function like the mildly mentally retarded, although they may not on testing be mildly mentally retarded. So when they're apprehended, they're giving confessions, some of which they haven't even really done. They confess readily and over-confess. They don't do a great job conferring and assisting counsel. Our big thrust in FASD experts is training local, regional groups to do this, because when it's done well, it tends to be very effective. So we're very excited. We're very appreciative. This was altogether a dream day, and thanks for the opportunity.